Welcome back to my channel. I'm Maggie Ostara, and I'm delighted that you're here. I am a certified human design and quantum human design expert and the creator of the 8 Pillars of Feminine Sovereignty. And today we're going to focus on the human design transit of the sun and the earth that begins on July 24th. And boy, is this ever timely based on what's happening in world events. So let's go ahead and dig in. So on the 24th, the sun is going to move into the gate 31 and the earth is going to move into the gate 41. Both of these are in collective circuitry. And so we have a little bit of a shift from the previous transit where we had one that was in collective circuitry, the 56, which was in the sensing circuit, and then the 60, which is in individual circuitry in the knowing circuit. And so we don't have any individual circuitry highlighted in the sun and the earth during this particular transit. We had a little bit of tension between that more collective circuitry and that more individual circuitry in the previous transit. But here we've got both of them are in collective circuitry, which means they're kind of about the big things in life. So that tends to have to do with things like institutions, universities, schools, governments, big corporations, big stuff, big organizations, things like the UN and so on. So we've been seeing a lot of activity kind of on the big collective level recently. And so we're going to dive into some of those specifics now as we get into the particulars. So let's start with the sun in the gate 61. You can see from this image that there's actually a complete channel that's happening here between the 31, which is on the throat, and the 7, which is on the G center. And the 7 is being lit up by Venus. And there's just 3 days where there's an overlap between the sun being in the 31 and Venus being in the 7. So it is the 24th, the 25th, and the 26th while this channel is being lit up. So if you don't have either of those gates lit up in your chart, you're going to be feeling this more. And what's really interesting is in traditional human design, this is known as the channel of the alpha. The 31 is the leader or democracy or the democratic leader. I like to call it the new world leader because it is the end of the pattern circuit or the logic circuit. And it is where we find leadership in collective circuitry. So this is the final expression of that leadership in the kind of the big scene. And it is definitely in the human design system. It is democracy and it is democratic. And we're seeing that there is a real debate that's going on both here in the United States, but also in Europe and also in other parts of the world between democracy and authoritarianism. Now, authoritarianism in the human design chart shows up in the gate 45, which is over here, which is the culmination of tribal circuitry. So the way that the human design system is set up is to say authoritarianism is really a tribal expression, has to do with smaller groups of people. And then when we get to really large groups of people, we need democracy. So it's interesting because the benevolent or the more awakened expression of the 45 is not authoritarianism. It really is that kind of sovereign expression, which is, yes, we do gather the resources of the tribe, but then we distribute them so that it works for everyone, which is not authoritarianism, right? It's the shadow expression that is authoritarianism of the 45. This is where we get, the corruption of royalty is what it comes out of. And in our world today, we don't see it so much with royalty. But we do see it with different leaders around the world standing in and being authoritarian. And so we've got this real kind of juxtaposition. And here the sun is really lighting up the democratic leader during this time. And this whole channel is going to be lit up for the next few days. The 7 is known as collaboration in quantum human design. It was more like this chief of staff in traditional human design. But as we're evolving our understanding about what democracy is, we're moving beyond just this idea of, the chief of staff and the president. Into something that is definitely more collaborative and involves more people, becomes increasingly democratic. Now, as you may well know, we just had a big change here in the United States where our president, Biden, decided not to continue forward with his nomination to run for president again. And he has endorsed Kamala Harris as his nominee for the president for the Democratic Party. This is a big change. It's a big thing that's happened. And there's a lot of stuff that's going on around, not just in the Democratic Party, but really throughout our country. And we've got a juxtaposition going on here between something that's more democratic and something that's more authoritarian. And this, I want to just say, is not an interpretation. This is actually the way that people are expressing themselves and expressing their values and expressing what they stand for. And one of the candidates is definitely more authoritarian and one is more democratic. Now, personally, I feel like we need a big reorganization of our democratic process here in the United States. And it's tricky when you have such a big country and so many people and so many different states. And I recognize that it's complex, but we do need to have a real redoing of our democratic process. However, I will say that I am a supporter of democracy. And although we have had an imperfect democracy here in the United States, we've had a democratic process and we do believe in the rule of law. And that is the foundation of the United States. And I'm an Americanist. I mean, I'm a historicist by training, and I, studied a lot of this when I was a professor. And so I do stand behind those ideals, recognizing that they've never been completely realized, right? And that there's a lot of different factors involved. There's a lot of profit-driven forces. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. I am not here to say that this is perfect by any means. However, it's what we've got. And so I think it's important for us to work with it. And I am an advocate for democracy. And so during this transit, while the sun is lighting this up, it's kind of like Democratic leader, wah. So it'll be interesting to see how this influences what happens on, certainly on our national stage, but also on the global stage, because like I said, this is collective circuitry. So it really is about the big things. And so during this time for you, it's important for you, or it's beneficial for you to be tuning in to what's your perspective on democracy or authoritarianism? What's your perspective on the democratic leader? How can you step into more leadership in some kind of democratic way in your life? How can you be expressing that out into the world? And for me, the fundamentals of this, why I call it the new world leader, is that there's a way and a value, if you will, that says everybody's voice matters, even if everybody doesn't get what they want all the time, because that isn't how things work, and nobody gets everything they want all the time. But everybody's voice matters. And so to me, that is kind of the fundamental basis of democracy, is everyone has a voice. So for you to be looking at, what is your stand around that? And where do you come down around that? And how can you bring this into some action in your own life? While this channel is lit up, you can be also looking into collaboration and collaborations that you're involved in, collaborations you'd like to be involved in. How can the collaborations be mutually beneficial, which I think is so important. I actually named one of the pillars of my book, Feminine Sovereignty, pillar number 7 is mutually beneficial collaborations. Because to me, this is the bedrock of democracy, is mutually beneficial collaborations. Again, not perfectly realized by any stretch of the imagination here in our country, but there have been many people who have realized it, and movements in that direction. So look at for yourself, and collaboration happens in all kinds of different places, because it happens with the people you share a home with. It happens with people you work with. It happens with your neighbors. It happens with any kind of groups, or, if you have a spiritual community, or if you where your kids go to school. There's all kinds of different places where we have communities, and all kinds of different places where we have collaborations. And I really feel that stepping into collaboration and also upgrading our ability to collaborate in a way that really works for everyone is a key component of our growing our new world as we're going through this birth canal that we're in. And so I just invite you to take a look at where can you be collaborating if you haven't already, or how can you upgrade the collaborations that you've been in? If there's been tension in them, or they haven't been mutually beneficial, if they've been more geared towards the benefit of some people and not others, then you might want to look at how can you make your collaborations more democratic and also more benefit to everyone involved. Then as the sun moves into the 31, the earth moves into the 41. Now, the 41 is known as fantasy in traditional human design or imagination in quantum human design. And what I love about this particular configuration is that this is where the earth is, right? So we're going to ground ourselves in this imaginative space. So the 41 is in the sensing circuit, which is collective circuitry, as I've been saying, and it is creative, it's right-brained, it's associated with storytelling, it's embodied, and it's experiential. So it's not left-brained energy, which is more, the 31 is more left-brained energy. So this is really a beautiful place for imagination, right? Because that's part of our creativity. It's part of our right brain. And so we're grounding ourselves in imagination, like what is possible, right? How can we start to imagine, which is a creative faculty. It's like an intuitive faculty. How can we start to imagine leadership, democracy, and collaboration at a higher level? Right? How can we, as we're imagining the new world that we want to live in and we want to leave to future generations, as we start to do that, how do we imagine the best possible configurations of that leadership energy, right? So we don't have to stick with the way things have been. We don't have to be stuck in that. I know a lot of times we can feel that way. It's kind of like the systems are really entrenched and they're really like that. But just even what we're seeing with the change of what's happening with the presumed Democratic nominee, we won't know till the convention happens, and there's legalities and stuff. I'm not going to go into the details of that, but there's a kind of re-energizing that's happening around this question of who will be our next president, right? And people are now starting to imagine something really different than they did when President Biden was still in the race. And we imagine here's the first, Indian, Afro, American woman who has been our vice president is potentially stepping into the big chair, as they say, right? That's really different. And so what are the collaborations that are part of that? And how do we use our imagination? To see that at the highest possible level? And it's possible, if you are in the United States, that you have another candidate in mind that isn't Kamala Harris. And then you start to imagine, well, how are you imagining that this whole thing will go over the next 100 days, right? How are you imagining that person is going to support the democracy and the mutually beneficial collaborations that you want to be a part of? So it doesn't have to just be about her, although it has really kind of electrified the country and the political process in an interesting way. It's important to recognize that imagination is real. A lot of times, we've gotten taught, oh, you're just imagining that, like it's not real. But actually, what you imagine starts to give a little bit of form to something that you might be feeling or something you might be longing for. And as you start to give it form, it actually starts to come into being. It's moving from, in the unified field, like these waves of infinite potential, they're starting to drop down into form, into particle. As soon as you imagine, you start to drop into particle. So don't dismiss this as something that's irrelevant or something that you should ignore. My suggestion is that you use it and you activate it and you work with it more purposefully. Because sometimes, like if I'm leading a meditation or something with people and I'll say, feel this or feel that or whatever. And then I'm like, imagine it. If you don't feel it, that's okay. Use your imagination because it's one of your creative faculties. So however you're feeling about what's going on in the political sphere, or if you're not really even paying that much attention to it, use your imagination to help ground yourself and ground your vision of the world that you really want to live in. Mutually beneficial collaborations are so important to me that this is a primary value that is undergirding and organizing the Sovereign Sisterhood, which is a new community project that is going to be happening. I'm going to be revealing it in beta in August, and then we'll have it full on in September, which is a community of purpose and passion and practice. Because in our world, the big structures that are going on tend to be hard to interface with. And a lot of us still feel really isolated, and people that we want to connect with. For example, with your interest in human design, you may not have anybody near you who's interested in human design or feminine sovereignty or some of the spiritual things that you're interested in. And how do you be a spiritual being with agency in the world, making your contribution? All these different things that we run into. And we benefit by being with others who are asking similar questions, being able to share and witness each other, being able to learn from each other, inspire each other, motivate each other, help each other stay on track or get back on track when we fall off track, because we all fall off track, right? And so I am really excited to be pulling this together, and it's a way that I'm going to be able to be providing to my community all of the different types of content and training that I have available. And they'll be able to be tapping into that. But then not only that, we're also going to be having regular opportunities to come together as a collective to do, yes, I'll do some training, but also to have lots of different ways of interacting so that you get to build those mutually beneficial collaborations. So if you want to find out more about that, come into our Becoming Sovereign Quantum Retreat Center, because that is the place where you'll get the information fast enough, or make sure you're on my email list. And because I will be sharing it with my email list as well. And we do have an intro event that's happening tomorrow on the 25th called 3 Keys to Creatively Living Your Human Design, because this is a part of what we're going to be doing inside of the Sovereign Sisterhood, is working with our creativity and our intuition in relation to human design and in relation to our lives. So that'll be happening. The link to join us for that will be in the description. And also you'll be able to find the recording there as well. And if you come in and you come and participate in this, then you'll be among the first to find out more about this Sovereign Sisterhood and how you can get involved with that. And I would just really invite you to come and check it out. And you'll have lots of opportunity to see if it's right for you. And I would love to have you. I would love to meet you. I love doing my YouTube videos, but they're one way, right? And I don't get to talk to you. So I would like to meet you and get to talk to you and get to know you, and see how we can help co-create a beautiful new world together. Okay. Many blessings. Much love. Bye for now.